silent dawn over the Persian Gulf on February 28, 2026, did not bring the peace of a new day, but rather the opening notes of a global symphony of fire. It was exactly 9:27 in the morning, Tehran time, when the skies over the Iranian capital erupted in a display of military precision that the world had not witnessed in over 20 years. 200 Israeli fighter jets, in the largest strike formation in the history of their air force, launched a synchronized assault on over 500 targets. Simultaneously, the United States military initiated Operation Epic Fury, a massive combat campaign designed to dismantle the very pillars of the Islamic Republic. The world watched in stunned silence as video footage emerged showing smoke billowing from the Ministry of Intelligence and the presidential palace. But it was the strike on Pasteur Street that changed the course of history. American and Israeli intelligence had identified a target of opportunity that they believed could end the conflict before it truly began. A high-fidelity meeting of the most senior Iranian leadership, including the supreme leader himself, was taking place. 30 precision munitions tore through the reinforced concrete of the leadership compound, and within hours, the earth-shattering news was confirmed. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was dead. President Donald Trump immediately took to social media to proclaim a masterstroke, calling the elimination of the 86-year-old cleric justice for the world. He spoke of the hour of freedom for the Iranian people and urged them to rise up and seize their destiny. In Washington, the initial mood was one of triumphalism. Strategists believed that by decapitating the regime and destroying 40 top commanders in a single morning, they had repeated the quick victory seen in Venezuela. However, as the dust settled over the rubble in Tehran, a much darker reality began to emerge. The decapitation strike, intended to paralyze the enemy, instead activated a dormant and terrifying doctrine known as the Mosaic Defense. For 2 decades, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps had prepared for this exact moment. The country was immediately divided into 31 autonomous provinces, each with the authority to fire at will without central command. Within 4 hours of the Supreme Leader's death, the first wave of over 350 ballistic missiles and drones roared toward American assets and regional allies. The war was no longer a surgical operation. It had transformed into a regional wildfire that was rapidly spiraling out of control. Sirens blared across Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, and Haifa, sending millions into bomb shelters. But Iran did not stop at Israel. They lashed out at every nation hosting American bases, turning the entire Middle East into a hostage situation. Explosions rocked the headquarters of the United States Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. Missiles impacted near the Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. In Dubai, a drone strike ignited a massive fire at the entrance of a world-famous luxury hotel, while the international airport, the world's busiest commerce hub, was forced to shut down indefinitely. President Trump's private assurances of a 4-day battle were crumbling. Instead of a surrender, the United States was facing an asymmetric war of attrition that threatened to bankrupt the global economy and pull every major superpower into the abyss. The secret calculation that this would be a clean victory had failed, and for the first time, the White House had to confront the terrifying possibility that the war was no longer under their control. Inside the White House, the air of confidence that marked the first 24 hours has been replaced by a palpable sense of panic as the administration's secret alliances and carefully crafted justifications begin to unravel in public view. For months, the American people were told that military action was a last resort intended solely to dismantle a nuclear program. Yet, as the bombs fell, the objective shifted with dizzying speed. President Trump began calling for total regime change, urging the Iranian people to overthrow their government, while his own Secretary of Defense and Vice President were simultaneously telling the media that the United States was not at war and only sought to stop nuclear enrichment. This internal fragmentation has exposed a catastrophic lack of coherent strategy. While the right hand of the administration speaks of democracy, the left hand admits it has no exit strategy and no plan for what happens after the regime is decapitated. The collapse of the narrative became even more damaging when Secretary of State Marco Rubio held a briefing that shocked even seasoned diplomats. Rubio admitted that the United States went on the offense, not because of a direct threat to the homeland, but because Israel had signaled it was going to strike Iran regardless of Washington's position. In a stunning display of logic that many analysts have called a war of choice, Rubio explained that the administration attacked Iran first, to preempt an Iranian retaliation against the United States that would have followed an Israeli strike. This revelation suggests that instead of leading the Middle East policy, Washington has been dragged into a regional configuration dictated by Jerusalem, effectively turning the United States military into a shield for another nation's unilateral decisions. This loss of control is not limited to foreign capitals. It is causing a volcanic eruption within President Trump's own political base. The MAGA base, which was promised an end to stupid foreign wars, now watches as American service members are killed in Kuwait and military bases across the region are bombarded. High-profile supporters and conservative commentators have begun calling the administration a bunch of liars, questioning why the United States is fighting for the interests of the Middle East while its own domestic economy faces a structural catastrophe. Public opinion has shifted violently, with polling showing that 60% of Americans now disapprove of the military campaign. The administration is also facing a legal detonation in federal court, where the testimony of Attorney General Pam Bondi has linked the timing of the war to a desperate need for a distraction from the Jeffrey Epstein files and allegations of a multi-agency cover-up. As the political pressure mounts, the secret alliances with Gulf partners are also fracturing under the weight of Iranian retaliation. Countries like the United Arab Emirates and Qatar, which reportedly lobbied privately for a hardline stance against Iran, are now finding their civilian infrastructure in the line of fire. Their governments are expressing public fury as Iranian drones strike luxury hotels and block vital shipping lanes, causing their stock markets to bleed billions of dollars. These nations have warned that they will not allow their territory to be used as a corridor of fire, yet they are trapped between their private security deals and the reality of an escalating war they can no longer contain. The White House is now realizing that you can start a war with a 6-minute video, but you cannot stop the chain reaction of failing alliances and domestic betrayal that follows. While the political foundation in Washington crumbles, the physical toll of the war has arrived at Dover Air Force Base in flag-draped coffins. The transfer honored 6 United States service members who lost their lives in a drone strike on a makeshift operations center in Kuwait. These soldiers, including a 20-year-old reserve soldier from Iowa, did not die in a war declared by Congress, but in a conflict launched from a resort in Florida. The image of President Trump attending the ceremony while wearing a $55 campaign hat sparked immediate controversy, leading critics to argue that the administration views the loss of American life as a mere byproduct of a noble mission. However, the reality on the battlefield is proving that the exquisite class of American weaponry is meeting its match in a strategy of fiscal attrition. The Pentagon is currently rushing to rebuild its missile stockpiles after just days of intense military action burned through some of the nation's most expensive munitions. Analysts estimate that the campaign has already cost close to $11 billion, with nearly $6 billion spent on interceptors alone. Iran has implemented what experts call a drizzle strategy, launching low-cost drones and ballistic missiles at a slow but steady pace. The aim is to force the United States and Israel to continuously fire million-dollar interceptors, effectively draining their defensive stockpiles over time. Reports indicate that 4 THAAD systems, each costing approximately $1 billion, have already been destroyed by Iranian drones that cost only $20,000 each. This asymmetric reality has left the United States unable to keep pace with its own high-tech systems. Even more alarming is the confirmation that Russia is now providing Iran with space-based surveillance intelligence to help locate American targets in the Middle East. This intelligence likely explains the deadly precision of the strikes on makeshift facilities and CIA buildings in cities like Dubai and Riyadh. While the White House tries to downplay these reports, the Pentagon is privately planning for a conflict that could last until September, directly contradicting the president's initial promise of a quick operation. The war has expanded into a logistical black hole where tankers are being refueled inside Iranian airspace because there are no safe runways left nearby. In an act of total defiance against President Trump's desire to have a say in the country's leadership, the Islamic Republic officially named Mojtaba Khamenei as the new supreme leader. The 56-year-old son of the late Ayatollah is considered a hardliner even more extreme than his father, particularly regarding nuclear ambitions and foreign policy. His appointment signals that the regime has no intention of surrendering or negotiating under the current conditions. Instead of triggering a democratic revolution, the bombing campaign has hardened the resolve of the Iranian people and unified the country's military factions under the Mosaic Defense Doctrine. The United States now finds itself trapped in a war where leadership can be decapitated, but the machine continues to fight independently in 31 different directions. The strategic fallout of Operation Epic Fury has now ignited a global economic mushroom cloud that the White House can no longer wish away with social media posts. While President Trump told the media he was not worried about anything at all, the reality for ordinary people is a brutal and immediate financial shock. The price of Brent crude has surged past $93 a barrel, a staggering leap from the mid-$60 range where it sat before the first bombs fell. At the gas pump, American families are facing the 4th or 5th highest price increase in the history of the country, with costs climbing as much as 18 cents a gallon in a single 24-hour period. This economic instability is driven by a terrifying fact that no one in Washington anticipated. The world's most critical oil choke point, the Strait of Hormuz, is now functionally closed. Although the waterway has not been physically blocked by debris, Iranian threats have caused shipping traffic to drop by an unprecedented 90%. For the first time in 80 years, the flow of oil through the strait has reached practically zero, leaving nearly $25 billion worth of cargo trapped in a logistical black hole. As the global supply chain fractures, the secret alliances that supported the initial invasion are beginning to rot from the inside. A dirty game of suspicion has emerged, poisoning the relationship between Washington's regional partners. Rumors have begun to swirl in diplomatic circles that the recent drone strikes on Saudi Arabia's Aramco oil infrastructure were not carried out by Iran at all, but were instead an Israeli false flag operation, designed to force Riyadh into an offensive posture against Tehran. While Riyadh is currently conducting an official investigation, the mere possibility of such a betrayal has sent shockwaves through the Gulf Cooperation Council. Countries like the United Arab Emirates are struggling to understand Israel's conduct and have publicly denied participating in any offensive strikes against Iran, insisting they will only maintain a defensive posture. The veneer of regional unity is shattered, and partners who once threw money at the Trump administration now feel that their safety was sold for a political gamble they never agreed to. Even the special relationship with the United Kingdom has reached a breaking point of public hostility. President Trump has taken to social media to openly mock Prime Minister Keir Starmer, calling the British leader too little, too late, after London initially refused to allow the use of its military bases for the strikes. The White House has declared that it no longer needs allies who join a war only after the victory is supposedly won, yet this bravado ignores the growing chorus of condemnation from Europe. Both the British Prime Minister and French President Emmanuel Macron have characterized the war as unlawful and outside the bounds of international law. While the bombs continue to fall, the administration has also targeted Iran's freshwater desalination plants, leading to a tit-for-tat escalation where Iran retaliated by striking the water supplies of Bahrain. By weaponizing drinking water, the conflict has crossed a line of humanitarian barbarity that is hardening the resolve of the entire region against American interests. The man of deals now finds himself at the center of a crisis where no one is willing to sign a deal, no one is willing to surrender, and the alliances that were supposed to guarantee a quick victory have collapsed into a landscape of fire and mutual distrust. The illusion that the United States military could maintain a clean and surgical environment has been shattered by the reality of a war that has entered a state of irreversible chaos. While the White House continues to project a narrative of total air dominance, even boasting that tankers are refueling inside Iranian airspace to maintain the tempo of attacks, the actual control of the conflict is slipping away. In the heart of Israel, the situation has become so relentless that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is estimated to spend 90% of his time in the air, essentially ruling his country from a plane because the ground has become a lethal kill zone. This is not the behavior of a victorious leader, but of a government under a state of siege, as Tel Aviv is reportedly taking a relentless pounding that air defenses can no longer fully suppress. The economic and physical exhaustion of the defense shield is becoming a crisis, with interceptor stockpiles dwindling while Iran employs a saturation strategy that lets enough missiles through to create a permanent atmosphere of fear. The chaos is not restricted to the civilian population, but has reached the most sensitive levels of American military planning. In a development that has horrified lawmakers, Iran successfully demonstrated the ability to blind the United States military by destroying the $500 million primary radar sensor of a THAAD system stationed in Jordan. By taking out the eyes of the defense network, the Iranian military has proved that even the most expensive American assets are exploitable. This loss of tactical control is mirrored by a humanitarian nightmare in Tehran, where the constant bombardment of oil refineries has created a literal Armageddon. Residents of the Iranian capital describe a scene where night has turned into day from the orange glow of massive explosions, followed by a black rain of oil and smoke that has descended on the city of 17 million people. The sewage systems are filled with ignited oil, creating burning rivers in the streets, yet the regime refuses to capitulate, instead utilizing its mosaic defense to delegate authority to individual commanders who keep up the fight even when cut off from superiors. Perhaps the most chilling sign that the war is no longer under control is the shift in operations at the Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Europe, the largest United States military hospital abroad. In a move that signals the expectation of a catastrophic escalation, the facility has halted its labor and delivery services to prioritize its primary objective, managing mass casualty events. Expectant mothers and families are being told to find care elsewhere as the military prepares for a new phase of the conflict that many suspect will involve boots on the ground. While President Trump privately tells associates he wants American ground forces inside Iran to secure unsecured uranium facilities, his own intelligence community is delivering reports that a ground invasion is destined to fail. The administration is also facing a domestic situation from within the Iranian public that they did not anticipate. Although the White House hoped for a revolution, they are instead seeing a society that is publicly sharing the coordinates of secret military hideouts, hoping that the American or Israeli forces will strike the Iranian soldiers who are hiding among the civilian population. The conflict has entered a stage where no one can predict the next 72 hours, and the secret calculation of a clean victory has been replaced by the genuine terror of a world at war. The convergence of steel and nuclear power in the Arabian Sea signals the arrival of a final, desperate chapter in a war that has escaped the grasp of its architects. As the United States Navy surges a third supercarrier, the United States ship George Haywood Bush to join the Abraham Lincoln and the Gerald R. Ford, the Middle East is witnessing the largest concentration of American naval air power since the Iraq War of 2003. With more than a quarter of the entire United States carrier fleet now committed to a single conflict, the message from the White House is one of overwhelming force, yet the reality on the ground is a portrait of strategic exhaustion. President Trump's demand for unconditional surrender has not brought the Islamic Republic to its knees, but has instead created a diplomatic dead end where negotiations are rejected and the only remaining path is a war of annihilation. While the Pentagon continues to report thousands of successful strikes, the Iranian drizzle strategy of low-cost drones and ballistic missiles is successfully draining the United States' stockpiles of million-dollar interceptors, forcing a fiscal war of attrition that the American economy was never prepared to sustain. The consequences of this miscalculation are reaching the doorsteps of the decision-makers themselves. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu remains a ghost in the sky, spending 90% of his time aboard a plane, as the ground in central Israel has become a relentless kill zone for Iranian ballistic missiles. The famed Iron Dome and aero defense systems are facing saturation, while the destruction of the $500 million radar sensor in Jordan has proved that even the most advanced American shields can be blinded. This tactical vulnerability is mirrored by a total collapse of international trust. Once reliable allies like France and the United Kingdom have publicly condemned the war as a violation of international law, while the special relationship has devolved into public mockery and diplomatic hostility. The secret alliances that were supposed to provide a coalition of the willing have fractured, leaving the United States and Israel isolated in a region that is increasingly viewing Washington as a rogue actor. As the war enters this new and more dangerous phase, the global power balance is shifting toward a multipolar reality that Washington can no longer prevent. Russia's active role in providing space-based intelligence to Iran and China's potential financial assistance have turned a regional conflict into a proxy battleground for the future of the world order. The Persian civilization, with its roots stretching back 2,700 years, is demonstrating a resilience that missiles cannot destroy, while the American dollar loses its altitude as the world's reserve currency amidst the chaos of a 90% closure of the Strait of Hormuz. The first 8 days of Operation Epic Fury have claimed over 1,300 lives, including 181 children, yet the administration has still not defined what peace looks like. The world is now trapped in a cycle of escalation where every strike demands a response, and every response pushes the planet closer to the abyss. History will remember February 28, 2026, as the day the fuse was lit on a forever war that no one can control and no one knows how to end.